Okay, this is today, and today we're going to look at a passage in Psalms 36 and discover an important spiritual principle that will help us navigate life quite a bit. I was watching, or I wasn't watching, I walked by and television was on and it had the impeachment going on, and this particular politician was saying, you know what? We haven't even heard any evidence, and we're planning on shutting this impeachment down without hearing any evidence. We can't do that. And then he went to show all the violence that took place, of course, in the seizure of the House and the Senate. And as I was watching that, I said, "Boy, that's uncanny. Just uncanny." There were about 60 so cases brought about the election, and all of them weren't looked at. The evidence wasn't even considered. And so, why would a group of people not protest and get angry when people aren't looking at what they believe is important to be looked at? And I thought, whoa, what's up with that? And do we do the same thing? Let's talk about it. Okay, today we're going to look at a great passage of scripture, Psalm 36, and we're going to look at a great source of pain in our personal lives as well as our national life. And the question that we're really kind of looking at today, that the text will kind of pose, what happens when you love yourself too much? And we live in a culture that's all about loving ourselves. Does that produce a lot of pain? And I want to just take some time to consider a few questions. First of all, we are being told by the world that we need to love ourselves, but can I love myself too much? Secondly, does loving myself help me love others? And how would I know if it's really helping me love others? And then three, what if hating myself and loving myself are connected? And what if the secret to accepting yourself and others? What is the secret to accepting yourself and others? Well, let's take a look at this passage in Psalms 36. Transgression speaks to the wicked deep in his heart. There is no fear of God before his eyes. For he flatters himself in his own eyes that his iniquity cannot be found out and hated. Now, this is cumbersome, and the translations on this are going to differ a little bit. I believe this is the ESV version. But it's talking about how that when a person, sin will cause you to think highly of yourself. Transgression speaks to the wicked deep in his heart. And there is no fear of God before his eyes, for he flatters himself in his own eyes too much. The idea is that he thinks of himself so highly that his iniquity cannot be found out and hated. So the good question here is, what can keep you from seeing your sin? And I believe that's a good question from the text. And what can keep you from seeing your sin? If you think too highly of yourself, if you flatter yourself in your own eyes, if you think too highly of yourself, you lose the ability to see your sin. Now that's sin will speak to your heart. And if you don't have fear of God in your life and you flatter yourself, you think a lot of yourself, you're not going to see your sin. And that is going to create some problems. Okay? So, putting that into a form of a spiritual principle, we can say thinking too highly of yourself keeps you from reflecting on your faults, which positions you in a bad place. Now, this statement, I believe, is an accurate spiritual principle, something we can base our life on because it does reflect upon the text and answer the question we've raised. And if you read through to verse 4, if you want to do that, or I'll tell you what, we'll do another video when we'll do 3 and 4 in the next one. Okay? Does this accurately describe the dynamics of what's being described in the text? And I believe it really does. So, in thinking through this spiritual principle, thinking too highly of yourselves keeps you from reflecting on your faults, which positions you in a bad place. That's more found in verses 3 and 4, which we'll deal with in a couple days. What are some questions? Well, do I consider others as important as myself, or do I see myself as more important? That's a good question to ask, and how would I know if I don't? Alrighty? When I encounter pain, do I find out the source of it or just get mad? Now, obviously, if you hit your hand with a hammer or something like that, of course you know what the source is going to be. But you might find yourself mad and you may not know why, and you're just mad that you're hurting. Okay? Am I quick to react against others when they disrespect me? Or do I take some time to think about it for a while? Others disrespect me. Do I automatically assume they're a jerk, or do I possibly sit back and think, did I say something? Okay, question number 5. What causes me to blow my top? Do I do the same thing to others? One of the key things in being able to see your sin is that you will more than likely be a hypocrite. What you don't like about others is probably can be found in yourself. So when somebody does something against you, you'll blow your top. But when you do it against them, you don't see it. Question number 7. When people point out my hypocrisy, do I listen or do I react back? Well, that's not the same thing. Okay. 8. Do I have friends who do the same? Am I caught up in a group that we all are neglecting our spiritual growth and not focusing on what we need to be focusing on in our relationships so we can help spur one another on to love and good deeds? How can we turn that around and begin to challenge one another to examine ourselves? And it's a good question to ask in this context, because who of us want to be a great source of pain to others? Question number 10, how easy is it for me to spot hypocrisy in someone else? Usually that's easier than spotting it in myself. Some of us aren't really good at it much at all, but we need to be able to do both, especially seeing it ourselves. What would the world be like if we saw self? If a politician on Capitol Hill say, you know what, hey, our courts have been shutting down people from really being able to see if there was any election fraud. There wasn't a course that would take that on. I could understand why people would be upset, but I tell you what, we need to see the evidence of this today, and we need to ask some deeper questions and dig a little deeper, because, we may have made some mistakes here. Wow, what an opportunity to provide some unity. Okay, we'll take a look at Trump, we'll examine his issues, but we're also going to take a look at what some of these people are upset at. It's only fair. 13, how can I see myself more clearly? Well, that's a good question. How can I? Well, if I flatter myself and I think too highly of myself, that's the wrong direction. So how do I humble myself? Well, maybe by serving others and putting them in front of me. Maybe that might help. Maybe that might be a place to start. How can I see others more clearly? When I walk into the grocery store, I'm thinking about what I need. I'm not thinking about what anybody else's needs are. I'm not even thinking about the person when I look at them, unless they're crying or something. Sometimes I don't always see that there are other people that are maybe hurting, and I need to forget my agenda for a little while and think about somebody else. And then 15, does this relate to me and my kids? Oh man, in parenting, nothing turns teenagers off more than hypocrisy. And this is a big trap, because if we flatter ourselves too much, we're not going to see our sin. And if we're not going to see our sin, we're going to sabotage our relationship with our kids. It's just the way it is. So this is today, okay? And I hope just examining and learning how to surface spiritual principles in scriptures just helps you grow spiritually and become more self-aware. And in becoming more self-aware, you'll be more aware of what's going on around you and be an agent of peace in the world, which kind of need that just a little bit. So hope you enjoy this discussion. Have a great day, and we'll see you hopefully, next time on the next Today. Bye.